Sun Summit is a gold copper exploration company focused on British Columbia with two primary assets. The JD project in the highly prolific Toodoggone region, close to other discoveries and high-value mines, as well as the Buck project in central BC. CEO Niel Marotta will be outlining the JD and Buck projects, including the significance of Amarc Resources' nearby AuRORA porphyry project and the recently released mineral resource estimate on the Buck project. It's Wednesday, March the 12th. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. Please remember this is neither recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Niel, thank you for joining us today. Greatly appreciate it. I guess you probably just got back from PDAC last week. How'd that go for you? How was, and I'm always curious on the mood in at PDAC where they're swinging off the chandeliers with the high gold price, or how was it all?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Martin. No chandelier swinging to report, but I thought the mood was good. I thought the attendance was very good. Somebody told me today it was a record attendance of some 27,000 people, so that's a great sign. I've been attending PDAC for many, many years now, dating back to the early 2000s. The show is big now, and it was well attended, and the mood was good. Not too good. I don't think we're at a top here at all, but it certainly seems the investor interest is coming back to the sector.
And how was the reception to the Sun Summit story there?
Well, we had a very busy few days at PDAC. We had a lot of one-on-one meetings on Monday and Tuesday, about 20 to 25 meetings, plus a lot of work off-site Sunday through Wednesday, and a lot of events that we attend as well, through mutual connections, colleagues, etc. And I thought the reception was very good, not just from investors, but also from other larger mining companies that are taking a lot of interest in the Toodoggone.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for that opening. And why don't you, well, let's dig into Sun Summit and see what you got here.
Sure, my pleasure. I'll let everyone take a look at the forward-looking statements at their leisure. Um, I'm fairly new to Sun Summit. I joined the company in January as CEO and as director. And so I think what I'd like to do today is leave everyone with a core message, really around my investment thesis for the company and why I was so excited to join Sun Summit. And I hope that translates into investors' excitement around the story. I've been involved in metals mining and in particular gold for a very long time. My background is in fund management and investment banking, capital markets over the last 30 years or so. And I actually, earlier in my career, ran the Fidelity Select Gold Fund. And I started running that fund in March of 2000, where I was not very bullish on gold. And that changed in 2001, and I haven't taken a look back. So I count myself as a gold bug, for better or worse. And I think the gold price has a lot of upside left ahead of it. And we can get into some of the macro reasons for why that is. But with respect to Sun Summit specifically, it's not just that the gold price has legs to go higher, but our projects are in a great jurisdiction, being British Columbia. The Toodoggone is a very hot district right now. We think that we have multi-million ounce gold potential at JD, that's in northern BC, with also potential for a copper gold porphyry system beneath that. Either of those would be a company maker, and we think there's potential for both. Our valuation right now, because we put out a resource estimate on our second project called Buck, um, and that's about 800,000 ounces. So at this point, the valuation is about $12 an ounce, and you get all the upside at JD for free. So I think that's very compelling. That's without question below replacement cost, where a lot of the juniors are trading right now. And I think we have a clear exit strategy here. I think it's highly doubtful we'll be mine builders, but absolutely this area lends itself to large-scale projects where bigger mining companies that are beginning to take interest and have interest in the area. The work that we do with the drill bit should really help in terms of exiting and either selling or partnering the project down the line. So I'm going to walk through now some macro picture slides very quickly. This is my background. I've watched gold on a daily basis for almost 25 years, so I take great interest in what's happening and why. And I went bullish way back in 2001 because of negative real interest rates. In 9/11, we saw, obviously awful acts of terrorism. But what that meant with an economy that was rolling over was that rates were going to go down and go into not negative territory, but negative real territory. So For those folks out there, that would just be subtracting inflation from the interest rate. And what you can see from this chart, oops, pardon me, on the bottom left, is when you go into periods of negative real interest rates like we had in the 70s, and again over the last 20 years, we had large stretches of negative real rates. It's very supportive of higher gold prices. Nothing goes up in a straight line, but that is the fundamental that I've hung my hat on for a long time, and I think that's exactly where we're heading again. It's very unlikely the U.S. raises rates from here, and very unlikely that inflation falls given all the tariff talk that's going on. We've also seen central banks become big buyers. That is the opposite of what was happening in the first decade of this millennium, of this century. And in the last 3 years, central banks are north of 20% of total gold demand. And I don't see any sign of that slowing down. What we've seen as a result is gold rising in all currencies, and that's extremely bullish. I won't take a huge amount of time to walk through the fiscal condition in the US. You can all look at these slides, but um, what I would point out is it's going to be very, very difficult to reduce these deficits without attacking some of the core spending. Really, it's funds that go to people that vote. Almost the entire budget goes to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. You've got defense and debt service that, amongst those five budget lines, eat up 100% of the tax base. And 84% of the tax base is payroll taxes and individual taxes. So you kind of get to this point where you have to ask yourself, what can be cut? What is left to be cut to cure this um, sort of runaway train in terms of debt to GDP? What I would say is that if there's $1 trillion of debt service on 36 trillion of federal debt, everyone can do the math on what the average yield looks like and look at today's yield curve. And I think what's baked in the cake is much higher debt service. And what's very risky right now is that the US runs the risk of having debt service become their number one budget expenditure. That is not great. That's almost Banana Republic-like status, and that is not where they want to be. And I don't think that's where anyone wants to see them, but you have to protect yourself, and that's what's great about gold. These charts here, I don't want to go through every single one of them. Gold's had a great run since 9/11, outperforming the S&P by quite a bit, even with dividends reinvested. But the most important thing on this chart, and thank you to Crescat Capital for letting me steal that chart from LinkedIn, but the miners for or the margins rather for the gold miners are at an all-time high. The gold price has only been above 1,500 for a few years, and now we're almost hitting 3,000. There was a small period of time in 2010 and 11 when we were north of 1,500, and now we're talking about margins in the industry that are above 1,500. That profitability is not reflected in the stocks, in my opinion. In addition, the junior names like Sun Summit are trading below replacement cost. I've seen studies that peg exploration cost per ounce at somewhere between $60 and $100 an ounce. So when you've got names trading at $10 or $20 an ounce, ultimately it will be cheaper for larger mining companies that have underinvested in exploration to buy those ounces as opposed to find them on their own. And so I think what you're going to get, supported by higher gold prices and by cash flow and profitability with the majors, is a wave of consolidation. And that's a big part of what we think will support Sun Summit going forward. So that's the macro picture. Where we sit in the infamous Lassonde curve, and I go way back. Pierre Lassonde's book was really the first book I read on mining 25 years ago when I first took over my fund, and Franco-Nevada was a huge position in my fund way back when. But we are right in the sweet spot of the Lassonde curve. So if you're looking to make money in mining, really there's two main areas to do it. One is with producing mines that have growth and are growing their profitability, or it's at the very early stage, which is exactly where Sun Summit is, in identifying resources, drilling, having great drill results, and then building a resource. And over that period of time, which can take up to 5 years or more, you can make great returns on your money, as we have great returns on investment with the drill bit. So what we plan to do this year is aggressive exploration on the JD project, which I'll get into in a minute. Buck will probably be on the back burner for this year. As I said, we did put out a resource estimate a couple of weeks ago, about 800,000 ounces. And then beyond that, we'll look to hopefully have a resource estimate on JD sometime in late 2026. Switching to the project here. Now, I'm not a geologist. If anyone wants to dig in, we can always have follow-up calls with our technical folks. But I know enough to be dangerous, so I'm happy to describe why I'm so excited about the project in the Toodoggone. The rocks that are in what we call the Golden Horseshoe are really the same as the Golden Triangle, separated by this large basin. And I think the thought in the past has been that it's not as prospective as the Golden Triangle, but ultimately, I think the verdict on all of this is that there hasn't been enough money spent in the area, not enough concentrated drilling, not enough deep drilling to prove up major resources. And so all the potential is there, and only now are you really starting to see major companies. We saw the results from Amarc's project, the AuRORA project. They're backed by Freeport and Hunter Dickinson. Great results there. Our neighbor to the west, Thesis Gold, is close to 5 million ounces on their property. And so this area is very prospective, and we have a large land package and some great targets identified. I think this is sort of a more of a zoomed in look on the area, and I think will help recap what I just explained. So we've got two main areas that we like and where we've had some great drill results on the JD project. The JD project itself is about 15,000 hectares. That's a pretty big land package. And to the northwest, you can see something that says Sun Summit and Eagle Plains, the Theory project. We announced a non-binding LOI some time ago, and we're working very hard towards getting a definitive agreement completed there. And I would expect that to be done in the coming weeks. And that would grow our land package from 15,000 hectares to 25,000 hectares. That is district scale. That is exactly what the larger gold companies are looking for. Scale, great districts, and great jurisdictions, and that's what we have. You
And
can
that
see
would be contiguous to the JD that would just add on right next to it?
it's actually not right next to it. It's not contiguous, but I would say it's just a few kilometers northwest from there. So it's
Okay,
certainly helpful from a resources point of view. Yeah,
for
being in
sure. Okay.
there. That trend, that's kind of overall trend in area. You can see here we've got this 50-kilometer trend that starts kind of at the Kemess mine, run by Centerra in the bottom right corner of this page, going all the way up to our JD project. So a lot of activity in this area and a lot of very successful companies. And what I would point out here on this map, whether it's Thesis or TDG or Amarc, you're looking at companies that have done more work than we have. They've been in this area longer and have invested more funds in this area, done more drilling. Their market caps are in the 80 to 160 million dollar range, and we're down at around 10 million. So that's really the what sort of kind of ties the whole thesis together with the right work done by the right folks. And we've got some terrific technical folks that have been in this area for upwards of 20 years and know the area very well. We think that's where our market cap is going. This is how we have a 10 to 15x opportunity in front of us. It will take more capital, but there's no way our share count goes up by 10 or 15x to get there. So this is really how you create value in this industry in the discovery part of the Lassonde curve, and that's by drilling off great results. What I would say is on the Creek Zone last year, and the stock had a great run on that news. It predates my involvement in the company, but we drilled 120 meters from surface at above 2 grams per ton gold. That's a great drill hole. That would have been a great drill hole, $1,500 ago on the gold price. But at $2,900 gold, that could be hundreds of thousands of ounces interpolated just from that hole. So we like the area, we like the potential. We're very happy to be here. This is kind of a zoom in now on the JD project, and we've got this 4.5 kilometer corridor between Creek and Finn. The drilling that we did last year primarily was on these zones, and that's primarily where it will be again this year. And I think what we'd like to do is a bit of infill drilling on Finn and some step out drilling on the Creek Zone. But that's not all we have in mind. So that's the gold silver epithermal cap to this deposit. But we actually think there may be a copper gold porphyry below. And so I'll just jump right to that. We put out a press release a few weeks ago talking about this 12-kilometer trend that we've identified. And you can see here this McClare Creek Gossan. That's a great sign of the kind of mineralization in the area. And so we've identified three main targets here. And we do intend, as part of our drill program this year, to poke some deep holes. And hopefully we'll tap into that copper gold porphyry system.
What evidence has there been so far of that porphyry project being there? Are you getting evidence from your prior drill results, or is it more of other?
There's a couple of things. Yeah, great question. Thanks, Martin. So just backing up a couple slides here. This spot right here, I don't know if people can see where I'm pointing on the screen, but
Yeah.
this is Amarc's AuRORA property. They had some fantastic drill holes that they put out in January. They're seeing copper equivalent grades of 1 to 4% copper equivalent, which is phenomenal. There's a
Yeah.
lot of gold and a lot of copper, which is great. The more metal, the better. And so that to me, that was very informative in my decision to join the company. So there's that aspect to your question, Martin. And then I'm just going to fast forward. We've also identified this untested chargeability high here beneath the creek zone. And it's not even all the way down to 500 meters or so. This is sort of 300 to 400 meters at depth. And so that's something we're looking to poke some holes into as well. So we kind of have our own internal results and then let's say the smoke from the neighbors around us.
And so that the drill holes you have there on the left part of the slide. So you at the end at the deepest parts, you were starting to get some sort of sniffing of some chemical traces that it could be pointing towards that.
Yeah, that's what we've done through our various surveys and drilling is we've identified these zones
Excellent.
and these areas where we would like to follow up on. Yeah, so it's really just a function of once you've done your homework, it's really just capital and time, and
Yep.
that's the thesis here.
All right. Makes sense.
Carrying on to fin zone again, sorry, it's probably worth backing up here. This hole right here is the hole I was talking about previously. This 122 meters at 2.1 grams from surface. Uh, there's a lot of great things in that sentence. So that's a very positive hole. And this area definitely deserves some step out drilling to see what else we've got there.
Yeah.
Fin zone as well. There's a lot of historical drilling that was done here at the fin zone over the years by a variety of different companies. There's about 300 drill holes. We have all that data. We've lost the core. The core was not available, but we do have all the data. That's all being digitized now. And I think the goal there would be to come up with a resource. We don't want to just put in investor money into developing a resource at Finn. We think there's a lot more meat on the bone around the property and the property. It's probably too early to just do infill drilling on anything, right? We've got a lot of space there. We've got some really interesting targets. And so what we're really after is trying to show what the outside potential is on the resource, not just do some just plain old infill drilling. So that's Creek, that's Finn, that's the copper gold story, and then just quickly here on Buck, I would say last but not least, this was previously an area where the company invested quite a bit of money, and we've identified or have added the resource estimate on this chart, a just over 800,000 ounce resource at about half a gram. That's not the highest grade in the world, but it's worth noting that if you looked at both Barrick and Newmont and their reserve grades that they put out, most of these companies will do a complete reserve refresh on an annual basis. So we're starting to see these come through. Both of those companies, two of the biggest mining companies in the world, have reserve grades below a gram. And so that was very interesting to me. And so I can recall projects that I was involved with upwards of 20 years ago where anything under a gram seemed a little bit suspect. And now here we are looking at the majors with their average grade being below a gram. So I guess it just shows Mother Nature has a pretty tight control on how much gold comes out of the ground every year. I would say a lot stronger than any algorithm could ever protect. And so I think yeah, look, I mean the higher gold prices will make the lower grade stuff economic, and that's where you have to go. You're not seeing, discoveries of really high grade gold projects as often as you used to. Um, over time things get discovered, but as these grades become more economic, projects like Buck, I think, become more interesting to acquirers. Yeah, this is just some historical look at Buck. We've got a very experienced management team and a good set of advisors, folks that have been involved in the company and the properties for a while. And so that also informed my decision to be part of the company. And like I said, our market cap right now, this is 12 million, actually is probably closer to 10 or 11. We do have 800,000 ounces that we've identified. We do have a real resource out there. And then all the work on JD should provide upside as well. So it should be a very exciting year for us, Martin.
All right. Um, so what is the plan? in this part of the world, there's no winter drilling. You've got to save it up and plan over the winter to get in there late spring, early summer and do the work then. What is the plan for this year?
Sure, yeah, that's a good point. For our project as it stands right now, without any infrastructure spend, we're somewhat limited to drilling in the summer and fall. So our drill season typically begins in July and will carry into the fall. And so that sets up for, I think, a lot of great news flow coming out in the fall for the company, which may seem like a long way away. There's still snow on the ground here in Eastern Canada, and certainly up in the Toodoggone, but that'll be here before you know it. And certainly that's an investable time horizon. So we expect to be drilling in July and through September, and that sets us up for great news fall this fall.
And are you going to be putting much work into the Buck project? What is your kind of your focus here? What do you like? You're not going to do infill drilling. You want to create some excitement on JD. There's a lot to be explored there. Talk about your I don't know if it's philosophy or your strategy on your drill program. What are you trying to create or uncover?
So our carrying costs on Buck are very low, probably under six figures, and I think that'll be there will not be a lot of work there this year. Our focus really is on JD. The Toodoggone is one of the hottest districts right now. A lot of companies the companies that I've mentioned have had fantastic performance, and have had some great results. And so we see the most upside for our investors coming from pursuing work in that area. Buck, I would say, is kind of our 1B project at the moment. And so I don't expect a huge amount of investment there this year. It's still a great project, but the upside potential at JD with some of the drilling that we've had already, and some of the drilling and great results that we've seen from our neighbors, that's where we'll invest our money. Um, what we invest, our minimum spend for this year is 3 million. And our cash right now is just under 2 million. So we'll need a little bit of capital. But the markets seem conducive to that. And certainly there's been investor interest. And that's where we'll put our efforts this year.
Gotcha. And so, does it make sense to maybe spin off Buck or to partner it off so you can really just put your focus in on the JD, or given the low carrying costs, you can sort of cross that bridge at a later date?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's certainly an asset. It's got value. There's real ounces there. It's a good
Yeah.
project. There's been historical mining in the area and some big players nearby. So we're open to entertaining those conversations. I think our focus is on pursuing JD. But if someone were keen on the Buck project, we'd certainly be open to those conversations.
All right. And so on JD, Uh, the focus is to get a little more vision on the gold silver projects, and then to test a little bit of the thesis that you've got, the big porphyry resource or mineralization below that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I would say probably tough to say what we're most excited about, but we had great results at the Creek Zone. And so we
Yeah.
do want to spend some time and effort on that area and do some step out drilling. And absolutely we want to poke some deeper holes. So that might be sort of de facto prioritizing what we want to do. But
Yeah. Because
yeah, there's
that's a pretty sexy hole you got there, long and rich, and that's kind of as good as it gets. That's awesome.
Yeah, the stock really had a great move. I think we went north of 30 cents last fall on those results. So that's what we want to see, right? That's what investors are playing junior gold names for, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots of ways to invest in gold. There's lots of ways to invest in gold stocks. And I think for folks that let's say use more of a pea shooter than a shotgun when selecting their gold investments, I think this is kind of the best of all worlds. This is probably the least expensive way to get big exposure into what's arguably the hottest district in Canada right now. And certainly it hasn't been drilled to death. Like the historical drilling at Finn is very interesting, but you're right, those results that we did get from the Creek Zone were very good. And I'm also excited to see what happens when we do some deeper drilling and test what's at depth And so there's potential for some really great results this fall if we hit what we hope to hit.
All right. Between now and let's say drilling, what are there other catalysts or news events that investors should be keeping their eyes open on?
Sure. Well, I think without going, let's say, drilling down into too much detail just about Sun Summit, I think you can expect great support from the gold price. I think you're going to see gold equities start to outperform the gold price in the broader market more so than they've done over the last, say, 10 years or so, or even 20 years. And I think you're going to start to see um, potentially some consolidation in the area. And I'm going to back up here and go right to this district slide again, just for illustration purposes. But when you look at thesis, you look at Sun Summit, you look at TDG, you look at Amarc, the combined market caps of those companies is well under $500 million. And you're talking about an area that could have a huge copper porphyry potential, along with, who knows how many millions of ounces of gold. There's already 5 million plus right in the area. So I think you're going to see bigger companies that want safe jurisdictions, that want scale, and let's say want to be able to acquire assets for cheaper than they can build them on their own. I think, look, it may not happen in the next 6 months. It might take a year or 2 years. I don't know. But I think any kind of activity in that respect, Martin, I think that's going to be very positive for all the names in the area.
Yeah. And one other thing I like, given the sort of interesting times between us and the United States and so forth, one of the positives of that will be is that I think collectively as a nation, we're figuring, okay, we have to be less reliant upon the US and independent and we have resources that we need to develop, and that the communities are going to be a lot more receptive of it. The government is going to be a lot, hopefully a lot less red tape and encouraging of that work. So hopefully that will make these projects a lot more valuable. Just they'll be a lot more accessible, and good projects, even good projects are sometimes hard to develop. But if the government can get out of the way, that makes them more valuable for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I obviously I don't think any of us like the trade war that's developing here or kicked off, depending on how you want to look at it. But it has been inspiring to see how Canadians have kind of pulled together stories of people going to the grocery store and looking for Canadian-made product. I think what's great about our business is we're largely unaffected by tariffs. I guess on the mining side, it could be some possibilities, but to explore for gold, certainly we're not exporting anything anywhere. Gold itself gold is meant to be a hedge, right? The idea is not to put all of your money into gold. I mean, that's a terrible investment strategy. You never put all of your money into anything.
Yeah.
But I can remember clearly in the early 2000s when the NASDAQ was rolling over and the markets had a couple of really bad years. Even 2001 weren't great leading into 9/11, and then 2022 or 2002, pardon me, was a very bad year. And yet the gold equities were up 50, 60% in years like that. So we haven't we had a good year last year on the gold equities, but um, I think there's room for much more of a move. I've always found it interesting too that when people look at junior gold names, they're not happy to just get 10 or 20 or 30% on their money. Everyone's kind of looking for a lottery ticket. And maybe
Yeah.
there's a good reason for that, right? These are not low risk investments.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take some risk, you should expect an outsized return. And so hopefully that's what we'll see. Hopefully we'll see more and more companies putting out good news. It feels like there's more capital available. We're starting to see larger bot deals get done, and that's really interesting. There's other industries out there that don't have that kind of access to capital. Um, I don't think we're affected by the trade war, other than that creates a macro backdrop that's very good for our industry.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing, I just generally bullish on asset prices, where assets are usually more of a safe haven, especially the gold. And another one, the sort of classic safe haven are U.S. Treasury bills and U.S. bonds and so forth. And as you said, with interest rates rising, if it the interest payments are greater than it just sucks up the whole thing. And then as well, I think people are possibly losing confidence in our southern neighbors. And are they really wanting to buy those treasury bonds? And they're looking to look for other safe havens, and gold is the obvious one on that, and maybe some Bitcoin or whatever else. But hard assets, when you're looking for something that's safe, and one of the biggest safe havens is perceived to be maybe not so safe anymore, those other ones gain relative value.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. People describe gold as a store of value, and I agree with that. But I've often been asked, what does it even mean, store of value? Well, it means it can't go to zero. I
Yeah.
mean, the gold's never going to go to zero. I don't know that I could say the same for any meme coin or cryptocurrency. I'm certainly not a crypto expert. What I would say to people that kind of agonize, which one should I buy, and is gold kind of your grandfather's crypto or something silly like this? The total market cap of crypto in the world is about 2 trillion. And the total value of all the gold ever mined in the history of the Earth, which is, I don't know, somewhere between 5,000 and 5 million years, depending on your religion, is about 20 trillion. Still much smaller than US federal debt at 36 trillion. And I think the buy thesis behind whether it's crypto or gold is ostensibly the same, and that people are saying, I want my assets out of the system. I don't want to hold fiat. I don't want to hold debt that's backed by, faith and credit of a nation or a military. That's what gold is. I think to a certain extent, that's what crypto is, just from the outside looking in. Um, Maybe some would argue that crypto is a brighter future on a transaction basis. I'm not sure if that's really the thesis why people are buying it. There's plenty of ways to transact digitally without having to buy cryptocurrency. So, look, I think gold's not going anywhere. I think it is still one of the greatest stores of value in the history of the earth, for all the right reasons. And I think the backdrop is still very, very bullish. Even looking at, I've had some people ask me, well, when you look at U.S. reserves of gold, can't they just revalue gold higher? If they wanted to wipe out their debt, we'd be talking about a gold price that would be tens of thousands of dollars higher. So, look, I mean, I'm not making a prediction that gold's going to 10 or 20,000 or anything like this. I don't think it needs to. I think when you look back, and I'm happy to flip to that chart again and give Octavio from Crescat all the credit, those margins are huge. I mean,
Yeah.
even looking, I'll use Newmont as another example. When you looked at their sequential profitability growth, it was really impressive over the last 4 quarters. And I think you're going to see more of that.
Yeah. And what the big gold companies have been accused of in prior cycles is being bad allocators of capital. I don't know if you're more of the expert on this area than me, where they've chased markets and spent money maybe not in the most wise manner. So I think my impression is that they have learned from those prior cycles. Hopefully they'll stay disciplined and then focus on good projects, and that which should add to everyone's margins, and then give value to hopefully projects like yours that show up to be as good projects.
Well, I think there's got to be a bunch of smart bankers out there that can make the argument, I think, maybe better than I could, that if you can buy ounces for cheaper than you could find them, why wouldn't you do so? And
Yeah.
um, we've seen times like this in various industries where companies trade below replacement cost. It's typically fleeting. It does not last forever. And
Yeah.
um, look, I think I do have some sympathy for the larger gold companies. This is a very tough business. Mining is
Yep.
very hard, having been through financing projects and helping on a corporate development basis build projects that went on to do very well. There's often times where the capital expenditures required to build a project are going up 10, 20, 30% or more real time. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's very hard to predict. And um, again, I would say I'm somewhat empathetic towards the senior management teams that go and build a good project based on a set of data that changes kind of under their feet. But
Yep. Fair
again,
enough.
I keep going back to this profitability per ounce. Now, we'll probably see some rise in the all-in sustaining cost, but this kind of profitability is very new for the industry. And uh, free cash flow is the great equalizer of all companies across all industries. And if this industry becomes a big producer of free cash flow, it'll be great for the mid tiers and the junior players because of the consolidation theme. I think it'll be great for the generalists, and that's what we really need to get back into this industry too, is the generalist investor that says, okay, I can believe in where the gold price is. And even if I'm not a gold bug or if I don't have a strong view of it going up another $1,000, here's a list of companies that are very profitable, pardon me, at today's gold prices. And here's a list of companies that would be excellent takeover candidates based on their relative valuation.
Neil, that was very interesting and a lot of fun chatting with you about the markets and gold and so forth. So, any final comments here before we wrap things up?
I'd say final comments. All of these materials are available on our website, sunsummitminerals.com. We have an info email that I see. People can email their questions, and if they have detailed technical questions to follow up. And, again, I hope people have gained some insight today and are excited about where our projects are at, the kind of value that we create with them, and the path to how we create that value for our shareholders.
All right, Neil, thank you very much. Very interesting, a lot of fun. All the best, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon as more developments come out on Sun Summit.
My pleasure. Thank you, Martin.